Pierre Gasly's anger over the truck on the circuit at Suzuka was the overriding story after Formula One's Japanese Grand Prix on Sunday. While Max Verstappen may have clinched his second F1 title in somewhat bizarre fashion after the late points confusion, the main topic drivers wanted to talk about after the race was safety. To see a vehicle out on the circuit with cars passing at speed in wet conditions left a feeling of unease among drivers, teams and fans. And although the FIA is set to launch a full investigation into what happened, there are some serious questions that need answering. In his initial radio messages shortly after passing the vehicle, part of Gasly's message said, "Remember what happened." It was a reference to Jules Bianchi's accident at Suzuka in 2014. In wet conditions, Bianchi slid off the circuit and collided with a recovery vehicle, sustaining severe head injuries. Bianchi died 9 months later. It led to a review of how F1 went about recovering cars from the track, and led to the introduction of concepts such as the virtual safety car. But the use of vehicles such as cranes or tractors to recover cars has still remained common. We saw it happen at Monza in the dry behind the safety car to get Daniel Ricciardo's car off the track, while Yuki Tsunoda's car needed recovering in Singapore just 1 week before Suzuka. It meant the conversation was already happening between the drivers and FIA officials about the use of such vehicles, as recently as Friday's drivers' briefing at Suzuka. The legacy of Bianchi's accident means it is always a talking point when F1 comes back to Suzuka. That is why it was so shocking to so many to see Gasly passing the vehicle at speed, but he was not alone in doing so. While he was going quicker, having dropped from the back of the pack after his pit stop, the rest of the field also passed closely by the flatbed truck while behind the safety car, and they also raised big misgivings about the safety procedures involved. Gasly admitted afterwards that he feared for his life, saying, "I hope this can be the last time that we see a crane and take such an unnecessary risk for all us race drivers." He was not alone in condemning the use of the vehicle on the track. Lando Norris and Sergio Perez did not hold back on Twitter during the red flag delay to make their feelings known. George Russell said if they needed to use a vehicle to recover a car, then it should only be done so under a red flag, no matter the conditions. Daniel Ricciardo called it a non-negotiable, having raced himself at Suzuka in 2014. It's also known that a number of the drivers were chatting about the matter via WhatsApp during the delay on their GPDA group chat. So, what answers do we now need from the FIA? Firstly, it must consider the procedure of using vehicles to recover F1 cars from the track. It noted in its post-race statement that it was normal practice to recover cars under safety cars and red flags, which is true. Again, we saw that at Monza and Singapore. But is it right to do so in wet conditions, particularly when there have already been a number of incidents and spins, and with reports from drivers that visibility was so poor? Carlos Sainz called it worthless, saying, "If you're going to red flag it anyway, why risk it?" Sending a recovery vehicle out onto the circuit is something that can only be authorised by the race director. Article 2.6.1 of Appendix H of the FIA's International Sporting Code reads, "No marshal or vehicle shall enter the circuit perimeter without permission from race control." Part of the FIA's investigation will need to consider why this decision was taken, particularly in the conditions we saw at Suzuka, and how to avoid putting the drivers at risk in the same way in the future. There was also some frustration from fans about the post-race penalty that was given to Gasly for speeding under the red flag. The FIA stewards confirmed shortly after the incident that they would be investigating Gasly after the race, revealing he had reached speeds of 250 km/h under the red flag, albeit beyond the incident site at turn 12. Gasly received a 20-second time penalty and 2 penalty points on his FIA Super licence as a result. The stewards noted he was in shock after passing so close to the vehicle, but still handed down the penalty. Gasly accepted during the hearing he was going too fast coming back to the pits, but it is really a completely separate issue. It is feasible that Gasly did go too fast under the red flag, and for the FIA to have made a mistake by sending the recovery vehicle out when it did. They are independent matters. Gasly speeding should not be considered at all when it comes to the vehicle being on the track, given the risk was also high for those who passed much earlier at a slower speed behind the safety car. That's because visibility was so poor. One of the only ways drivers could try and get a better view of what was coming up ahead would be to dip out of the spray that was being kicked up by the car ahead, moving to either side. You had to move out of the spray to get a clear view, said George Russell after the race. Moving out of the spray meant into the line of the tractor. Thankfully, no one was harmed on Sunday at Suzuka, but it remains a stark reminder to F1 about the risks that remain at play and the never-ending push to try and reduce them. All eyes will now be on the FIA's investigation, the answers it hopefully provides, and the steps it must take as a result to try and ensure scares like this never happen again.